All right, welcome, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, to another exciting episode of Under the Dome tonight. We are, 2 weeks away from the draft, 3 weeks away from the draft? I know it's just the beginning of the month, but draft week is officially the last week of April, correct?
No, next last.
You sure about that? 24th?
26. 27.
Okay. Good enough. Good enough. I'm confusing it with Jazz Fest, so that's where my head is today. So we got a few things going on today. First off, I'm your host, Alan Ulrich, here with my partner, Mr. Sean Williams, and Sean is having technical difficulties tonight with his headset, so he's going by the speaker on the computer, so you may hear an echo every now and then of my voice. And I apologize for that. Not only because you have to listen to my voice, but you have to hear it twice. How you doing tonight, Sean?
Doing good, man. How about you? I've just in the past hour and a half, 2 hours, we've had a tornado touchdown about 2 miles up the road. I have a 20-year-old offspring that's working out in it. We're hoping for the best.
Yeah, that stuff's supposed to be coming through here in New Orleans about midnight tonight. So we'll see what happens.
That's kind of like double jeopardy, isn't it? If you live in New Orleans and you dodge the hurricanes, you should, by default, be disallowed stuff like tornadoes and flash floods and stuff like that, right?
Well, I won't be that upset if a tree takes out my truck because I really want a new one right now. So, you gotta look at the positives of situations here. It's just you can't just sit there and say, "Oh, tornado is a miserable experience. Got to go through hurricanes, stuff like that." I want new shit. That's how you got to look at it. So let's start first off talking about the draft show that we will have coming up. That's why I even mentioned the draft. Sean, give us all the details on what you've got lined up so far for the draft. The draft show, I should say.
Yeah, we're going to follow the same format that we used a year ago for the inaugural edition of this show. We're hoping to have, and I'm still diligently pursuing such an end, hoping to have a special guest for the first hour, and then we will go into the second hour, which will be a live mock draft of just the first round with certain rules and regulations. First and foremost there will be no trades. We will go with the draft order 48 hours prior to the actual draft. 48 hours prior to our show. That draft order. We will have one person drafting for each division. For example, suppose this guy, and to use an example from a year ago, a really good friend of mine, Jake Arthur, who covers the Indianapolis Colts so magnificently, he drafted for the entire AFC South, all 4 teams from each division. One person will be responsible for drafting for them, and so on and so forth. And we will go completely through the first round of the draft and do a mock draft. We will have some of the same players that we had a year ago. Jake Arthur, Bob Rose, our buddy, and covering 3 of the NFC South teams will be excuse me, please. Josh Schultz, who covers the Atlanta Falcons. Considering he's from Atlanta, I couldn't in good faith allow him to pick for the Saints So our old buddy Tyler Raymond will be coming in and covering the Saints for us. But we have some of the best and most qualified people. Our buddies from Saint Craft Radio from San Diego will be covering the NFC West, for example. We will have all bases covered, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Alan, if I'm not mistaken, I want to say that our Donnie Lambert pre-draft show of a year ago was our most viewed episode of the entire season that year.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. It was really popular. It was really well done. And the guest we had last year was, and I'm going to butcher this man's name, Herb
Tiopi.
Tiopi. Thank you. I've been in the comic book world too much lately. I'm in a Facebook group that's all about comic books, and I was going to say Herb Trimp, who is an artist for the Hulk magazine, and no, we don't want to go there. So anyway, thank you for saying his name, because I was definitely going to butcher it. Yeah, it was a very popular show. I really enjoyed it, and I played the role of commissioner. Basically, I would just tell each person what team was up for this, and it's a lot of fun. It's just yet another mock draft, but what makes it fun, we get to discuss a little bit, and we'll have just a couple sentences per player, why a team would take this guy. And it really gives some of these other guys to cover these other teams to talk a lot about what goes on in a division and what's going on in a team, where they think they need to be focused on. Last year I gave my son a hard time because he took, I believe it's Chris Conley, the other cornerback from Ohio State.
Gave him a hard time is a bit of a misnomer, don't you think?
Yeah. And we actually took Marshawn Lattimore. So that it's kind of fun that way. I forgot who he picked for the second one. I think he picked Derek Barnett at 11.
Actually, Tyler, I think Matt chose the first pick, and Tyler picked the second pick. But for the life of me, I can't recall who it was Tyler picked. I know it wasn't even remotely Ryan Ramchick. I'll put it that way.
No, in fact, I want to say Derek was earlier to somebody else. So anyway, it's a lot of fun. It's fun to do this, and then you just see where your player ends up going in the actual. Speaking of which, the Patriots made a big move today. They treat Brandon Cooks like an Aaron's own, and traded a player. I'm sorry, another. For Cooks last year to the New Orleans Saints, and the Saints ended up with the, what was it, the 31st player. They actually got a better value by trading Rams for the 23rd overall pick of the draft. So now the Patriots have two first-rounders very close together. They got 23rd and 31st picks.
So the trade for Odell Beckham is forthcoming, right? Forthcoming.
That's the rumor. Honestly, I'll be shocked if they do that, because about this in a minute too. The other rumor now is the Patriots are looking to shop, and I would think if you're considering dumping Gronkowski, which is what teams are going to do now, if you become a veteran of a certain age, they're going to move you. Teams are going to move you because it's cheaper to build through the draft. I would think they're going to use first. If they move to replace Gronkowski, probably would Dallas go to, and then pick. I can see them possibly bringing in a quarterback, a guy like Mason Rudolph, because you've got nothing behind Tom Brady, who's 40, who will be 41 come opening day, I believe, or during the season, he'll turn 41. And they have no future quarterback anymore. They traded Jimmy Garoppolo. So
yeah, Tommy Boy,
I just can't see them. Tommy Boy? Oh, yeah. Okay. I'm thinking, as soon as you said Tommy Boy, I'm thinking,
Chris Farley.
holy shit.
Holy shnikes. It's a Super Bowl. Anyway, I digress.
So my impression is this. I think the Rams are trying to build a super team not to win a championship, as shocking as this may seem. If they get one, that's great. But here, I think they're building a super team to get people in the stands, a la the Los Angeles Lakers, where you have celebrities in the stands, you have celebrities on the sideline, and the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum becomes the in place to be for the who's who of Los Angeles and Hollywood. It's a marketing trick, okay? You're putting all these named players because you want to have excitement in a town that doesn't give a damn about football in this city for people to come out to watch the Los Angeles Rams play. And you do that by bringing in stars. You don't care if they work together. You don't care if it ends up being a championship team. You're bringing in players to make this a super team, a la the Miami Heat, a la, the New York Yankees and the George Steinbrenner. Something to make the city energized about football. Okay.
To quote, and this is a reference that the other Ulrich brother, Danny, will be able to equate with. To quote Jim Ross, it's not about winning or losing. It's about putting an ass every 18 inches.
Yep. That's exactly what you're trying to do. So when you look at these moves they're making, you have to look at it from that perspective. The Odell Beckham thing, I just can't see the Patriots doing that because Bill Belichick, you have to realize whenever you're dealing with Bill Belichick, you're dealing with somebody who is always trying to take advantage of you. So even if you feel like you got a good deal, you're still looking back, counting your money going, did I really get this deal? Did I really get what I thought I got? This is a good deal, right? This is a good deal because he just plays people. So I can't see him willingly giving up 2 first-round picks for an Odell Beckham to make the Giants a better team. That just doesn't happen. He would steal Odell Beckham before he gives up 2 first-round draft picks. He would steal Beckham for a 5th and a future 7th. That's a Belichick kind of deal.
Well, let me ask you this: we had a workout earlier this week with the second generation running back Benny Cunningham. Mm-hmm. I call him second generation. I can't help but wonder if he was any related to the earlier Cunningham. But anyway, at the 11th hour and 58th minute, he says, "Thank you. No, I'm going back to Chicago." Mm-hmm. Alan, you have a much better business, a much better sense of the business side of this than I do. What's if you know that there's nothing that's going to come of it? Is this just for the purpose of filing it away for future reference? Is this for what purpose does it serve when we're working out these people that aren't coming?
It's an information gathering. It's no different than you working out draft picks that you're not going to take. It's information gathering. So you come in and say, I got a complete file on this player. We've met this player. We've discussed things with this player. It's not just you looking at film all day long. Cunningham and his agent probably were trying to use the Saints as leverage to get the Bears to move on their initial offer. And he may have gotten cold feet. He may have felt like, because he looked at the Saints and he would get a certain figure from the Saints. So it's entirely possible that he just went ahead and took the deal. They called him and said, "This is our best offer. We're going to take it off the table if you can keep looking after that, and we might revisit it again. We might not." And he got cold feet and said, "Well, you know what? I'm going to sign it then." You don't know. Some players can play the game with the icy stare and just feel like they're going to get the best deal they can possibly get the longer they hold out. And some players blink. It's ultimately why strikes usually fail in the NFL, who can hold out. And you have some players who feel like, and they look at their paycheck, they can't afford to hold out that long, and they blink. And management knows that. So, from the Saints' point of view, you go ahead and take the player in. It doesn't cost you anything. The player's flying in sometimes on their own dime. It doesn't cost you anything to bring a guy in, check him out, put a file together on him, and save it. Maybe one day you might make a trade for this guy, and you've got a good file on him. You may have an injury, and you make an offer to the Bears and say, "Hey, we're interested in this guy. He worked out for us this summer. Like to see if we can do something for him." So it's all kinds of things. Just it's never a bad thing to have information on a player.
Okay. Well, from that we move to the subject of the week that always causes your eyebrows to cross. We may as well go ahead and get that out of the way. The rhetorical question of the week, is Lamar Jackson a legitimate NFL quarterback prospect?
Short answer.
Let me preface this by saying that I've seen all the mock drafts that, it would be the perfect fit. Well, you can go to hell. Me personally, I would rather see us draft 10 Junior Galettes and 3 Brandon Browners before we pick a Lamar Jackson to play quarterback for the New Orleans Saints. And before I get branded as everything from an idiot to a racist, that has absolutely nothing to do with race, creed, or religious background, Lamar Jackson is not, in my opinion, as a quarterback prospect. I watched his workout. Yeah, I saw his best throws. He's not a legitimate franchise quarterback prospect. And I say that with all due respect to the guy. I know he won a Heisman Trophy. For lack of a better way of putting it, he won a Heisman Trophy in college. This is not college. This is the NFL. You're not playing against a defense that has 2 or 3 standout defenders on it. You're playing against 11 of the very, very, very best in the world at what they do every week. I don't think that his style suits the professional game. I really don't. Now, should he change his stance and go to a different way of looking at things and possibly consider being a receiver or something else along those lines, there's a possibility he could have a career. Should he decide to doggedly pursue the quarterback position, I can't help but feel like he will be along the same lines in recent history as your Tim Tebow, your Johnny Manziel, your Tyrod Taylor. There'll be a footnote. It's nothing against them personally or their abilities, but the style of offense that they ran in college is not prevalent in the pro game now.
Well, here's my take on him. If the question is Lamar Jackson a legitimate QB prospect in the NFL, I'm going to say yes, he is, but he's not a first-round talent, or he's not a top 20 pick, although he may get drafted that high. And my feeling behind that is that I think his game needs work, okay? And when you're drafting a guy that high in the draft, you want a more polished product. Can he run in the NFL and run away from trouble and all these things like that? Absolutely. You know, he can be like, try and be like Michael Vick and run around and, you know, do all the things that he can do. He can throw the ball well. He has a lot of potential. The problem you run into is, do you overemphasize the athleticism and hope his game catches up to him so you take him high, or do you take him really where he should go in the second, maybe third round? Is about where a quarterback with that level of play goes. But, you know, Danny Werfel went in the fourth round because of Mike Ditka. You know, the Broncos took Tim Tebow in the first round. You know, some people just kind of fall in love with the star potential and don't look at how well does this translate into what we want to do offensively. And I think that's where the problem is for Lamar Jackson, is how does what he does well translate into what we do well on our offense? And
where did Schuler go?
Huh?
Where did Heath Schuler?
Heath Schuler went third overall by the Washington Redskins. He went to came from Tennessee and went to Washington third overall. Hey, Rick Meyer went second overall. Rick Meyer was considered the next Joe Montana, and he actually played.
Heath Schuler can sit back and he can say something that a lot of third overall picks cannot say. He is still in Washington all these years later.
Yeah. But, you know, I was going to say Rick Meyer, actually, here was a kid that actually outplayed Drew Bledsoe his rookie season. And then when they took this offense to the next level, where he had to make more difficult throws and had to progress in his game, defensive coordinators had studied him and realized he didn't like to throw to his left. In fact, he avoided throwing to his left. He was horrible throwing to his left. So what did? They pressured him on the right side, so he had to throw to his left. You know, and ex-Saints general manager, who then was working for the Seattle Seahawks, I got to give him credit. I mean, this is a genius move. After it was revealed that maybe Rick Meyer is not a very good quarterback, he was still able to parlay Rick Meyer into a first-round draft choice to the Chicago Bears, where they realized very quickly that Rick Meyer was a disaster. So, you know, it all worked out in the long run for the Seahawks. But, you know, that's the stuff that you have to be careful of. You look at the film, and let me just say this about the Heisman Trophy, okay? The Heisman Trophy is given to the best college player of that season. It means absolutely nothing as far as projection to how good they're going to be in the NFL. It's just for that season, you were the most exciting and best college football player. Peyton Manning never won a Heisman Trophy. Okay, he came in second.
I'll go a step further, and I'll say it's not necessarily the best nearly as much as the most hyped. And
yes,
And
Yes.
that is a drastic difference. That is not nearly the same thing.
Yes, that is true. That is very true. But what I'm saying is, Peyton Manning is by far one of the greatest quarterbacks ever to play the game. Okay, but he didn't win the Heisman Trophy. Tom Brady, your favorite player, wasn't even a starter at Michigan. He split time with Henson, the Drew Henson, the baseball player / quarterback for Michigan. And look what happened with Brady. You can't make that projection with a guy who had an unbelievable college career is going to go to the pros and do the same thing. It just doesn't work that way. If it did, there'd be no science to the draft. It'd be just like, oh, we're going to pick this guy because he had a great year in college football. Then we'll pick this guy and this guy. It doesn't work that way. That's how a Joe Montana goes in the 3rd round. That's how a Tom Brady goes in the 6th round. That's how, Drew Brees goes in the 2nd round, or how a Marcus Colston slides all the way to the 7th round, because you're looking at players, what they did in college, then they end up going to the right system to become a better player. So going back to Lamar Jackson, that's what has to happen to him. He has to go to the right system, that they build the offense around him and give him the kind of system that he can thrive in. But Lamar Jackson has to become a better player. And this is one of the arguments I had with people on Facebook about it. Putting a player like a Lamar Jackson into an offense, the offense has to be Lamar Jackson centric. And what that means is Lamar Jackson has to be the be-all and end-all to that offense. Where he goes as a rusher, as a running back, and as a thrower, a passer, determines how good that offense is. He cannot be in an offense where he is just a cog in a wheel full of weapons. It doesn't work that way. You can't, because you're limiting his ability. Because now people are fighting for touches with a ball. Okay, if you look at any offense that has this kind of weapon, whether it's a Michael Vick, Randall Cunningham when he was with the Eagles, go back to even RG3, Cam Newton, those players become the center of that offense. They make that offense rises and falls based on those guys. Okay? If they're having a good game, the rest of that offense is thriving. That's different from a pass pocket-oriented quarterback like a Drew Brees. Yes, Drew Brees has to have a good game throwing the ball. But if Drew is having an off day throwing, he's got 2 running backs behind him who can carry the load. He doesn't have to make all the plays with his arm, okay? And he's not running for first downs. He's got playmakers to go and get those first downs for him, okay? In an offense that's quarterback-centric, you look at a guy like Cam Newton. How many times was Cam Newton the leading rusher for the Carolina Panthers? How many times does it have to be Cam Newton has to run well for that offense to go? Even people who talk about like a Russell Wilson, whose game mirrors kind of more Fran Tarkenton than anything else. Russell Wilson carried that offense, especially in those last few years, because the offensive line had turned to crap. And once Marshawn Lynch was out of there, and you could see the offense already evolving away from Marshawn Lynch, once Russell Wilson was there, it became much more about Wilson running around, making plays with his legs and making plays with his arm. So that's the kind of team that Lamar Jackson's to go to. And you got to think about a team like Buffalo, Miami, even Arizona to an extent. An offense like that where he is the playmaker. He has to be the playmaker. If he's in an offense where he's got to share the playmaking ability with multiple players. And I'm not just talking about one running back, but I'm talking about multiple running backs, multiple receivers. You know, it's about matchups. It's about, you know, throwing the ball in rhythm and all that kind of stuff. That's not his game. That's not what he's going to do best, because those offenses about getting the ball out of the quarterback's hands as quickly as possible and get into the running back's hands or get into the receiver's hands, something like that. So that's kind of my answer for Lamar Jackson. I think if he ends up in the wrong team, he's going to be a huge bust. He has to end up in a very special team with a certain kind of head coach that can work with him and develop the offense around his ability for him to be successful. And unfortunately, because of the hype and because of his athletic ability, he's going to get overdrafted. He's going to get drafted higher than I think he really should go. I think he's more of a second or third round draft pick. If he was not a sub 4.3 guy, that's probably where he would go. But because he is so fast and he can run and make plays like he can, they're going to overdraft him. So that's my very long-winded answer for that.
Well, in my opinion, I look at this thing one way, and that's the fact that this is a quarterback-driven.
Mm-hmm.
So that being said, teams are going to be ready, willing, and able to reach on a quarterback quicker and more easily comes the risk of reaching on a player at the quarterback position than it does anywhere else on the field. You look at a year ago, Mitch Trubisky, Chicago sold a farm to move up one position to draft a guy that had started only 13 games at the college level as the franchise guy. Teams are going to be willing to take that chance and run that risk, drafting early these guys on the hope that that gamble is going to pay off. Of course, the odds tell you that 9 times out of 10, that gamble isn't going to work out.
No, and the Cleveland Browns are a textbook example of that. I mean, look, let me just see something here. I had the list up here earlier today. Quarterbacks. Okay, since 1999, when the Browns came into existence, returned to existence, we have had. These are the Browns quarterbacks: Tim Couch, Doug Peterson, Tim Couch again, Kelly Holcomb, Jeff Garcia, Trent Dilfer, Charlie Fry, Derek Anderson, Brady Quinn, Colt McCoy, Brandon Wheaton. Now, how many of these guys went in the first round so far? Tim Couch, Charlie Fry was not, Brady Quinn, Colt McCoy, Brandon Wheaton, Jason Campbell, Brandon Hoyer, Johnny Manziel, Josh McCown again, Robert Griffin III, Deshaun Kaiser. None of these guys, and let's just start from 2011. They've had a different quarterback starting every year since 2011. Colt McCoy, Brandon Wheaton, Jason Campbell, Brandon Hoyer, Josh McCown, Robert Griffin III, and Deshaun Kaiser. And that doesn't count that during these seasons, you've had players like Seneca Wallace, Thad Lewis, Johnny Manziel again, Connor Shaw, Cody Kessler, Kevin Hogan. The list just goes on and on. Spurgeon Wynn, Ty Detmer. Luke McCown started 4 games for him. I mean, Bruce Gradkowski, Ken Dorsey, Jake Delhomme finished his career with the Browns. That's a great example of a franchise. And Deshaun Kaiser's not even on the team anymore. They've already moved him off to the 49ers, I think. it's a great example of a franchise that just doesn't know what to do with the quarterback position. And when you run into those kind of problems and you draft based on what you think a guy can do for you, as opposed to developing the system and what quarterback can I get that will fit this system that I want to run, that's how you end up with a draft list like that. Or, I mean, a quarterback history like that. You know, you're constantly trying to chase lightning in a bottle instead of developing a system that this is the kind of system I want to run. I need to get a quarterback who fits that kind of system, or design a system that fits around the strengths of my quarterback if I believe in that guy.
Well, let me ask you my evaluation of the whole Cleveland thing, and Jack may send me a terrible, terrible text message after this, but I don't think that the shortcomings of all of the – now, I'm not going to individually evaluate the talent of each of those guys, the 20-plus guys on that list in the past however many years. The shortcomings of those quarterbacks had a lot more to do with the level of talent that they possessed. I mean, you have the shortcomings of the infrastructure surrounding your team first and foremost, in my opinion. You have the insecurity, instability of the coaching situations that each and every one of those guys were in. Mm-hmm. Is that a fair assessment?
No, it's all part and parcel of it all. I mean, you have a revolving door at general manager, revolving door at coaching, revolving door players. You have no system. You have no consistency whatsoever because you've made bad hires all the way along the way. Okay? And it starts with ownership on down. I mean, this is how John Meekum ran a team, you know, when he was owner of the Saints. They have no idea of what they want as a franchise. Excuse me. This is why I told you last week, if I'm the Browns, I'm taking Barkley first, number 1 overall. And my philosophy is this. I'm going to build a power running team. I'm building a team that I'm going to have a strong offensive line built around running the football. Okay? And I'm going to get a quarterback who is a game manager for now, who manages the offense and throws high percentage safe stuff. I'm going Jim Moore old school for now. And then, as I establish my identity, I'm going to work on this quarterback and expand the offense as he becomes more comfortable. But my offense still will run through my running back. I need a running back to run this team. And that's what I'm going to do now, which is the opposite of the way we play football today, which is all quarterback-oriented. How many times does the quarterback throw the ball a game? And lots of big numbers, high, arena football kind of football. I'm going old school with the Browns because this is where my identity is going to be on offense. And on defense, my defense is going to be built around big guys who rush the passer, put a quarterback on his butt, but also play the run well. I'm going to win 20-17 kind of ball games. I want a good kicker who kicks well outdoors in the elements. I want a punter who flips the field and puts the opposing offense in 80-plus yard, typical 80-plus yard kind of drives, so my defense can wear them down, and I'm going to play low risk, Marty ball. That's why Marty Schottenheimer was so successful in Cleveland. I'm going to go Marty ball on these guys until I feel like my quarterback has developed enough that I can take the shackles off of him and become a much more productive offense because I'm playing outdoors in Cleveland. And I'm going to let that crowd get fired up because they want to see they want to see Jim Brown. They want to see Milton Mack. They want to see Ernest Biner, even though he fumbled. They want Bernie Kosar. They want Michael Dean Perry. They want to see that kind of team again. Okay? And I'm burning those damn uniforms. I'm bringing back the white uniforms, all white, and the white pants, the brown jerseys. That's what I'm bringing back. The classic 80s look Browns. But, I mean, that's just one team. So, when these teams, and go back to Lamar Jackson, when these teams are trying to develop an identity, you want to draft a quarterback then who's going to reflect that kind of identity. You want to draft a quarterback who is going to be the face of your franchise, or a player that's going to be the face of your franchise. You're going to build the franchise around the skills of that player. Okay? And that's what you do when you pick in the top half of the draft. Look at the Jaguars. The Jaguars just basically did what I just said as far as what I'm telling the Browns should do. The Jaguars did it. They're about a quarterback short away from being a championship team. It took a long time. But
you look at that playoff game last year, as you astutely pointed out at the time, had the Jaguars had a quarterback that could make seasoned and experienced throws at the end of that game, it would have the Patriots would not have been in the Super Bowl.
Yep. Yeah, unfortunately for Jacksonville, they went too far too fast. But that's the nature of the AFC right now. And the limitations of Blake Bortles was exposed when he played against a team like New England. Bortles is not where they need to go. They need a quarterback who is ready to take that next step, which is interesting because when we talk about the draft too, what the Browns do with that first overall pick will determine where the Giants go. Do the Giants go Barkley if the Browns take a quarterback first? Do they take Bradley Chubb? Or, wild card out there, do they go ahead and draft a quarterback now as a replacement for Eli Manning? And then what does it say about Eli Manning?
Okay. Well, I think the Giants are going to be in the same frame of mind as the New Orleans Saints. You have a Super Bowl winning quarterback on roster. You need to adjust your expectations to win now with that player rather than trying to put it off and rebuild while you have that player. And I think the same holds true for the New York Giants with Eli as it does for the New Orleans Saints with Drew Brees. Now, I think it remains to be seen come August and September just exactly how many pieces that Eli is going to have around him for that particular frame of mind. I don't think that it's going to be nearly as much as what Drew has in New Orleans, though.
No, not even close. I mean, Eli is, and the Giants are, they got a new head coach. They are at worse than the Saints in 2015. They are very far away from a championship window. It is unlikely, in my opinion, that Eli Manning returns to the Super Bowl as a New York Giant. And that's what makes it interesting to see where he goes from here. Now, a lot of speculation early was that he was going to go to, Jacksonville to replace Blake Bortles. I don't think the Giants are ready to make that step yet because they've got so many holes. They really, it's about building, again, what we were talking about with Cleveland, build your identity first. Start by fixing that defense. Start by fixing an offensive line. Get a running back. Build your identity. What kind of team is this going to be? And that's where the Giants are right now. Eli is going to be there to keep them relevant and help them win while this new team is being built around him. But he's not going to be there to see the finished product. I think quarterback will be one of the last things, unless something unexpected happens. I think quarterback is one of the last things that the Giants look at replacing. They're going to replace him when they need to.
Well, me and a close friend of mine were having this discussion Sunday. The whole theology, if you want to call it that, behind the strategy of building a team in the past 20 years has changed so much. And the example that they put to this person in particular put to me was Dallas Cowboys. You drafted Troy Aikman, and for 2 seasons, Troy Aikman got beat like a redheaded stepchild that stole something at a family reunion, while you added Emmitt Smith, while you added Michael Irvin, while you added that defense. But your quarterback, and if you really and truly, if you think about it, the way that teams are building now is almost polar opposite of that. You build that team up, and then you bring in that final piece, which is your franchise quarterback.
Yeah, I know, and I think that's where this has. That's where they have to go with this. It's about. Yeah, it's about finding your franchise quarterback when you are ready to build your franchise back up with a quarterback. I don't want to repeat a lot of things I just said, but I don't think it's this time yet. I think they're starting at ground zero with a new coach. They want to start forging an identity first, and then look at a franchise quarterback probably next year. I think that's where the Giants are right now. We've been talking a little bit about the draft last week and this week. Where do you think the Saints go at 27 now? Given that the Patriots now have 2 first-round picks, one of them at 23rd, given all these quarterbacks we're talking about, and we're projecting that at least 4 are probably going to top 20, maybe 2 running backs go in early, Barkley for sure, maybe Darius Geis from LSU goes early. Where do you see the Saints looking now at 27?
To be honest, I find it really, it's hard to guess if you really want to know the truth of it. I thought that missing on Graham meant that we would be going all in on an elite level tight end. But bringing back Ben Watson, I think could possibly forego that for the year that we are signed for to have Watson on the hook, so to speak. That could put off the tight end, but I still think that it's a priority, as is an edge rusher. I think bringing in the guy from the Jets, his name escapes me at the moment.
Demarius Davis.
Yeah, Davis. Bringing in Davis perhaps puts middle linebacker maybe not off the list of wants or needs for the draft, but perhaps pushes it back in terms of priority. So I think that barring some blockbuster deal that Sean Payton is famous for maybe not so much making as pursuing. To get a guy like a Baker Mayfield, should he fall, you notice I haven't let that go yet.
Yeah. No, hey, I haven't either, but I think it's less and less like.
Oh, I'm glad you do, because if it all goes south somewhere along the line, I'm gonna swear up and down it was your idea, and I was just being supportive of you. No, I can't see any option to best serve the needs of this team beyond probably an edge rusher.
Yeah.
Now that I've took 10 minutes to answer that one question, what about you? What do you see being the top priority with that number 27 pick?
Well, Peyton said there was 3 positions he needed to upgrade. You're looking at edge rusher, wide receiver, and tight end. Those three positions. I think Ben Watson is the just in case position. I don't think he's the now we don't have to take the pressure down on us to take a tight end anymore. He's a just in case we can't get the tight end we want. We at least have something we can fall back on. So I still think tight end's a high priority. Edge rusher, I think, is very high as well. And I think the good news about a lot of these moves that are being made is there's a lot of emphasis on offensive players early in this draft. People can get mad when they see tight ends go off the board early, especially, the tight ends they want. The guy from Penn State, the guy, Dallas Goedert, who we already talked about, Mark Andrews, maybe from Oklahoma. Those guys coming off the board, it's going to piss a lot of Saints fans off. But the good news is because those guys went, somebody good is sliding. Somebody in a position we need is sliding. And it could possibly be an edge rusher. Now, I'm not saying that a guy like, Bradley Chubb's going to slide all the way to 27. It's not going to happen. But, when you're looking at the Marcus Davenport, you're looking at the Harold Landry, you're looking at the edge rushers that, pick your edge rushers you like a lot. Those guys, it's very likely the more offensive players go off the board, it's very likely those guys will slide. And that's what you want to see as a Saints fan. Okay? Because I think you can get a quality tight end in the 3rd round. It's not the glamour tight end you like. It's not going to be Jimmy Graham redo like you may see in some of these other guys. But it's going to still be a solid guy, whether it's a Dalton Schultz from Stanford or a player like that. I think the other position, the wide receiver position, I don't think they addressed that in the 1st round of the draft. I think the wide receiver, especially the players that they really like, are more 2nd and 3rd round prospects. And I think the Saints do make an effort to get back in that 2nd round, maybe to grab a wide receiver that they really like. Because they want a slot guy / kick returner / somebody who can play that number 2 position, opposite Michael Thomas. That way you kind of rotate in with a guy like Ted Ginn Jr., and you rotate in with some of these other receivers. I think Brandon Snead probably does come back,
Willie Snead.
I'm sorry, Willie Snead. I was combining him and Coleman. I'm not sure about Brandon Coleman. Brandon Coleman may come back as well. There's no interest in him right now. And I think that's why the Saints didn't tender him, is because they weren't worried about losing him and not tying up that money on anybody. And you can probably get him cheaper. Here's the one thing I want to throw out there, though, that could possibly upset the entire apple cart. Trading for Gronkowski. If the Patriots put him out there, do the Saints make that trade? I think they make that trade if they want to try and revisit a Jeremy Shockey kind of situation, where you're bringing a guy in like a Gronkowski, knowing he's probably going to miss more games than he plays in, okay? And you're going to rent him essentially for 3 years, and then he retires. But the fans are going to love every single time he's out there and he catches the ball, just like they did with Shockey. And he's going to become more of a legend on the field for what he supposedly did than what he actually did. You talk to people about Jeremy Shockey as a Saint, and they act like that was one of the greatest tight ends the Saints ever had. He never scored a touchdown his first season here. He only scored 3 the Super Bowl season and 3 after that. He missed more games than he was in. But I guarantee you, everybody remembers that Miami game where he caught that one pass against the Dolphins and went down the field and he's stiff-arming that guy all the way down the field. Fans remember that play. And they remember him limping in the Arizona playoff game and catches a touchdown pass. They remember that. They don't remember he didn't play hardly the rest of the game. You know, that's the thing. So, and with a guy like Gronkowski, the other thing you got to work.
Jeremy Shockey is he's one of the most reviled former players ever. It's bad when you have a player like Darren Sharper who's serving time in federal prison and he's thought more highly of than Jeremy Shockey by the Houdat Nation.
They remember the splash plays. That's what they remember. And that's what stands out. The Shockey touchdown on the Super Bowl, you know, and that little slant. You know, what he did the rest of the game, they don't remember. They remember that play. Okay. So,
Did he play any more than that play?
He played in a handful of series, but you know, Dave Thomas did more in that game than Jeremy Shockey did, but it's irrelevant. So with Gronkowski, if you make that trade, then you got to figure out how you're going to fit that cap, that contract under your cap. That's the other negative. But if you trade for Gronkowski, and I wouldn't trade any more than a fourth round pick for him. You know, I'm not giving the Patriots anything. But if I'm trading
across the street to pick up the papers because you gave him to me. But
if you trade for Gronkowski, now you're pushing your tight end position off. You're upgrading your tight end position off for a season. You're going to worry about getting a tight end next year, not this year, because your tight ends will probably be, Gronk, Watson, and probably Hill are your 4 tight ends. Or your 3 tight ends. Maybe Man if you keep 4, but I doubt it. That's going to be your tight ends, and you have an old tight end core, but you've got guys who are going to make plays for you. You kind of solved your third down problem, so your pressure is not to get that, and you can focus more on taking other players in the draft. That's the only reason I would make that trade. Is you're doing it to take the pressure off of having to decide to get a tight end now. You've opened yourself up for a much better draft. It's just like what you would have done with Jimmy Graham. You bring Jimmy Graham in, same thing. You're renting him for about 2 to 3 seasons, and you're going to make your move to get a tight end, maybe this year, not necessarily. Might wait another year to get the next tight end. You just made it easier to take the best player available in the draft. So that's my only justification for taking a guy like Gronkowski. But it's got to be on a no more than a 4th round pick. We're kind of up against the clock, believe it or not, already for stuff. I know you want to talk.
We'll save those
okay
for next time.
That's fine. I mean, that's your. To me, though, I think you really, unless somebody starts tumbling, I don't think they're looking at quarterback at 27. I think if they're going to take a quarterback, they're going up to go get one of the big ones. I've heard Mason Rudolph even now at 27. That's now you start seeing some mocks putting him at 27. I don't see that happening. I really think they're going to focus on an edge rusher or a tight end. Those are the only 2 positions they're going to look at 27, unless something spectacular happens, like Calvin Ridley falls all the way to 27. And if Calvin Ridley falls to 27, I'm going to be like Michael Bennett versus a security person in the wheelchair. I am running somebody over to get that card up to the podium because that's one of your best receivers there. Perfect for this offense. He'd be a great compliment to Michael Thomas, not as the number 1 guy, but as a great compliment to Michael Thomas.
We're going to get about that, right?
Oh, yeah. I've been saying that joke for a while, though, so what the hell? No one's gotten really mad at me yet.
Guys, we want to thank you guys for joining us
Absolutely.
and invite you on April the 24th, which will be the last Tuesday prior to the draft on the 27th. It's going to be, it's one of, we do our show 52 weeks a year. There's only 2 nights per year that we do an expanded 2-hour program, one of which is the first show, or excuse me, the last show prior to going into the beginning of a season, and the other is the last show before the NFL draft. And we're going to have journalists like Jake Arthur, Bob Rose, John Butler, Tyler Raymond, Matt Ulrich, Josh Schultz, David Harrison, just all these guys that are very, very good at what they do. And they're going to be involved in this, plus a special as yet unnamed guest in the first hour of the show as well. And we want to invite we will have a special 7:00 p.m. starting time for that. That's Central Time. For those of you in the East Coast, that'll be 6. For those of you in the West Coast, that'll be 7:00 Central Time.
2-hour difference, dude. It's 8:00. It'd be 8:00 on the East Coast, but 7:00 Central Time.
Okay.
You can tell Sean doesn't get up very often.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I
8:00 on the East Coast, 7 Central Mountain, and it would be 5 Pacific.
Oh God. Anyway,
they don't even say Central Mountain anymore. But yeah, that's
all the guys that are on the East Coast that I talked to about doing the show. They'll ask me, "Well, what time is it?" And I'll have to go 8-7 Central, 7-6 Central.
You should see me at work. I'm going, okay, what time is it in England right now? What time is it in Norway right now? What time is it in Germany? Then I got to buy certain things. So, yeah, I have to do the math in my head. So, yeah, it's fun. I get emails at 3 o'clock in the morning from these people. Anyway, and the draft is, you said the date. What day is the draft? The draft show?
The draft show is going to be on the 24th. That's the last Tuesday.
The last Tuesday. Okay. Yeah. It's not on a special day, it's a Tuesday. Oh, gotcha.
No, it will only be a special 1 hour earlier start time for that show. It will be the last Tuesday before the draft, which will be on Thursday the 27th.
Yes. Okay, good. We just want to make sure we got that clear because some people just look at the day, not the date. So anyway, now we got that as clear as mud. I hope you guys had a good time and enjoyed the show. Join us next week. We'll talk some more about the draft. We'll start talking about where the Saints can go after that first round pick. What other positions should they target? And especially with day 3, where you've got a 4th, 2 5ths, a 6th, and I believe 2 7ths. What kind of positions should you target with those day 3 picks? Are we going to start looking at more depth players? We brought back Jerome Bushrod. We'll talk some more about the free agents we did sign and how that impacts what we're going to be looking for in the draft. We'll talk more about that next time. In the meantime, guys, girls, ladies, gents, boys and girls, children of all ages, thank you for joining us in Under the Dome tonight. We'll see you next time. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Good night.